and welcome to the Varn blog. Today I'm here with Sudip Bhattacharya, and we're talking about punditry broadly. We're going to start talking about a recent piece you did for Revo Press. I'm just going to formally announce, for conflict of interest reasons, I am under contract with Revo Press to produce a book. So people just know that. But I actually didn't know you had anything to do with them. And ironically, even though I'm on the contract to produce a book, you published on their Substack and I have not.
Oh wow, okay.
I haven't written anything for that in a while. So I wanted to talk to you about this problem with the framing of, sometimes I like to call this the bullshit democracy industrial complex, which is this way in which we talk about authoritarianism and fascism or post-fascism, whatever you want to call it. I think fascism and post-fascism both probably apply.
Right.
The way in which you talk about this for some of these people, and then when actually confronted with it in real time, they suddenly become super uber cowards. And I also want to talk about this as a way to talk about punditry more generally, even maybe alternative media punditry, and the way it's had a trouble coming to grips with the current moment in a variety of directions. So we'll start with talking about, the misunderstandings around Trump as you see them, and then move into maybe misunderstandings about Mamdani and other key up-and-coming figures on the U.S. political stage. So, how have you seen, Sudip, American pundits really fall down? I even think maybe even comparison to the first Trump administration in dealing with what's going on in the federal government.
Yeah, I just want to say, Sudip, just at the it's fall down. I mean, I'm being quite honest with you. I think it's kind of been more of the same though, because my main issue, as I talk about in this piece that's on Revolt Press, is not so much them not even having issue with Trump, because for the most part, what I've seen, aside from even Fox News, which is its own cesspool of just horrible people, I mean, explicitly horrible, because a lot of it is horrible people. There is room for criticism of Trump among the pundits, usually. But a lot of the criticisms, even when they're starting to use phrases like fascism, they are rather vacuous, and they don't explain. Well, they don't know what fascism is, but either way, couple that, they don't explain fascism well. They still blur the line between extremism and fascism of all sides, for example. And then finally, like coupled with Mamdani, there is a sort of essence to everything where it's really about, again, civility and returning to a liberal norm where all sides can be sort of healthily respected in the discourse, rather than what's been happening over the last, not even over Trump, right? It's been going on for 30, 40 years since that little blip that we had of not democracy, but something that was kind of okay enough-ish in the late 60s, and that blip kind of going away rather fast. Since then, things kind of going to shit. So for me, it's the falling down is a lot to do with still doing a lot of vacuous framing that ultimately really serves very little purpose in elucidating anything that's really clear for an average person, even for those of us who have a feeling in our gut that something's wrong, right? So I think that's like CNN, for example. I try my best not to watch all these things, ironically, but CNN, even when they have criticisms of their own pundits, they still offer 7 to 8 people on some of these shows. I think like Abby Phillips' show, and 2 of whom are spewing some of the worst things you've ever heard. And then you'll have Anna Navarro, daughter of, I forget exactly the relationship, but someone who's anti-Sandinista, Parenthood, who also gets to then frame themselves as resistance. So in the end, if anyone's able to torture themselves and endure that torture to watch CNN, they learn basically nothing about what's really going on.
I've definitely seen that. I mean, one of the things that I've seen lately is the amount of like former neoconservatives who now vaguely identify with the Democratic Party throw fascism around like as a word, but also like will completely ignore some cases the active roles they personally played in building the legal framework that enables the current thing to happen.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, Bill Kristol may become woke, but I remember what he did during the Bush administration. So I
Right.
find this very convenient right now. And I definitely see this on CNN. I also see it in places that are more explicitly left liberal adjacent, like MS Now or MSNBC.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
where increasingly you just see pundits that I associate with the right now going on to be anti-Trumpers, and they're not even. It's not even like the Lincoln Project. It's a little bit vaguer than that. Now, I wanted to ask you. You actually start your discussion, but almost by contrasting George Jackson and Timothy Snyder.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Um, um, but one of the things that I found interesting, because I don't so much watch CNN, I can't, or even MSNBC, but I do watch a lot of political TikTok to try to figure out, like, as an almost anthropological experiment, to figure out where people in Gen Z are like talking to themselves. And there was this weird moment about 6 months ago where instead of they went from calling Trump a fascist without any context to calling him a communist
Oh,
without
wow.
any context.
Huh.
And this was really picked up amongst people in the like groups implicated in the like the 1620 project and Chorus Media, which is kind of a super
Oh,
PAC
yeah, yeah, yeah.
downstream of super PAC media project. And I also saw it with a lot of these bulwark former neoconservatives because they're like, oh, Trump's doing state interventionist into the economy. No liberals ever done that before. Yeah. Therefore, Trump is like a communist was kind of a crazy take. But to me, it seems downstream of like Snyder and the On Tyranny people who just pretend that, you know, I mean, it's almost like the way they use totalitarianism in the 60s and 70s as a way to equate all these things as it like, dung to Romania, to both in the communist and fascist periods, to Albania, to all of this just somehow being the exact same
It's the
thing.
what? It's the Wes Anderson film. I haven't watched a lot of his, but I remember watching one in pieces. It was called
Mm-hmm.
what was it called? The Grand Hotel Budapest or something stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's like a. It's obvious that some characters in that film are fascist openly, the main villains. But then there's a scene at the end where the Budapest hotel falls into disrepair anyway, as it enters, the communist phase. It's kind of like hinted. So it's still like not the same because you don't see actual figures as vicious as a fascist. So I guess give credit to this, this amazing individual, Wes Anderson. But at the same time, it's still disrepair. It's gray. There's no sense of like any kind of liberation. So that's what I think of happening now. It's like it's either immense sorrow and horror that fascism truly is, but then it blends very nicely with, but in the end, the real alternative is liberalism versus this gray, drab, sort of tortured communist future that comes after, which still also kind of hints at a past. Like communism is just, it's not forward moving, So
Right.
I feel the same energy with a lot of things going on. Like I think the authoritarianism thing gets on my nerves because it is very true. Like fascism is authoritarianism, but so can be different versions of good things too. It's not like it's not that simple to just say, like you said, state intervention, authoritarianism. I mean, I would sure hope that one day we have a state that affords things or does taxes, for example, and then takes away the wealth of rich people. So that's authoritarianism. Is that fascism? No. But I'm pretty sure with the pundit class, they'll call it such. I mean, this is the same pundit class that also thinks like Latin American pink tide governments are the same as fascist predecessors. So there's something going on here, right? They're all ultimately trying to protect their own social order, however tenuous. But it is funny, like what you're saying is true. Authoritarianism is a phrase that really gets under my skin for those reasons.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. Joe Lepore says something. I can't believe any historian would actually be this vulgar.
Right.
Any analogy to the present can be found in the history of other countries, in whims and cruelties and fantasies and insanities of tyrants of antiquity, tin pot dictators, Latin American caudillos, and modern strongmen. Nilo, Stalin, Kim Jong-il, call the historians who write about these guys, please. And I'm like, well, they would tell you that they're not remotely the same thing if you were a serious historian.
Right.
Like, even if they're all bad, which I don't even know we would, like, they're not the same thing. Like,
and to give some defense, like I read the article as much as I could. She was having some really interesting points just about like how communication styles differ, how Trump is now having way more mass influence than previous presidencies, and there are still like differences you can find in style in terms of even the so-called founding enslavers who were just like, we don't want a president to have this far reach. That was kind of her main point. But still, when this passage is, because I was just like looking through the article because I was like, there has to be something new on the New Yorker, and even though I like most of their stuff still because I'm snobby, free access, I guess. But when I saw this piece, though, I was like, I did a double take. I was like, is this really happening? Like, are we really like, you're right. Like, it's one thing to say there needs to be something you can pull from the outside a little bit, because that's good analysis. It's another to say that the only way to really understand Trump is to look completely outward, which again goes back into even his first run, right? That's why I said there's like a lot of similarities, because the pundit class in his first run, I feel, were actually very critical of him for a brief moment until he became the presumptive nominee and they couldn't have enough of him. You know, they every single time he talked, they just gave he's going to say something awful, let's have the cameras on him. But I remember, like, I wrote this in this piece, like Trevor Noah. I know he's not really that funny, but Trevor Noah, like, he had that African dictators thing and people were like really rah-rah-rahing it. But I was also it just reminds me of that. It's like, okay, so you're really going out there and saying we cannot, because you're again, not only deflecting, you're in essence, what's the word? Preserving an American myth, of governance and civility and, good leadership, even if it's flawed, because you're saying anything that's bad is a disease. It's a foreign intervention. And it's the same thing with how even people view Putin, right? Even though he's not a good guy, like Putin's, even the Democrats do this. Putin, the U.S. Reagan used to be anti-Soviet. What happened now? It's like, that same relationship, like they're kind of insinuating that Trump is not following in the true Republican tradition, I guess, of arming right-wing mercenary groups in Central America, killing priests. But they're basically saying that. They're like, again, they're just conflating Putin's Russia, which has the Russian Orthodox Church really in stow, to the USSR. It is also a disservice to the USSR to compare the two. So yeah, that's kind of like another little, there's so many interesting things happening that kind of makes me both amused, but also, like you said, reading that passage, also confused, being like, I can't believe you think this. Like, there's no way you think this.
Yeah, because, for a liberal historian in America that's also fairly popular, I don't think Joe Lepore is like the worst historian in the world. Like, that's the funny thing. And that's why, that's why that quote in particular, like, I expect David Brooks to be an asshat, but I don't really expect Joe Lepore to sound like, I don't know, someone like Ann Applebaum, who's a devoted anti-communist, who's also an ever-Trumper, who is constantly pretending as if they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Or even, I guess this way is another continuity, is like the weird anti-Soviet stuff that emerged around people like the MSNBC crowd when
Rachel Maddow?
When Rachel Maddow was basically doing the liberal version of right-wing conspiracy talk all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, making it sound like Russia somehow stole the Georgia election for noted Trump fan Kemp.
Yeah.
And stuff like it was just bizarre.
Yeah.
And I agree. It has this flattening out effect that also just refuses to deal with. And I've had liberals on my show who have issues with this. That even if you think Trump is something different from the past,
right,
it doesn't emerge from nothing or it's just foreign. It's just not the case.
Right. No, that's the problem. Like, it's not. For me personally, I'm not of the mind to say that somehow, like, there's a lot of knowns and unknowns. Like, I do think it's a bit much when people try to find the perfect analogy, even within American history to now. Because I think what we're experiencing is both something new and old. Like, one, eugenics is back. So that's fun. You know, that's a fun time. Stephen Miller's in the house reading Camp of the Saints with his favorite groups, you know, like, hey. And it's funny because I'm Bengali, I'm Indian American, but literally I think that book is about the Bangladeshi refugees going on a raft who I think were literally called shit eaters by the French author, arriving in France, just give a heads up to everyone, and I guess sexually assaulting people, the good French liberals who believed in them. So the moral of the story is white European society, don't give in to the liberal side. You have to end these hordes of brown people before they come and hurt you. That's the guy who loves that book is now in power twice over, and this time he's even more effective. So there's eugenics, but then there's also a lot of unknowns, right? Like, which is, yes, there's eugenics, but also weirdly we have certain spaces where certain things can exist that they couldn't before. So there is an amalgam of weird shit, like American weird, like I'm still figuring this out. Like, I don't think anyone has a proper hold of this right now because it's so weird. But the thing is, there is historical precedent to some of this internally that one cannot let go. Like, even in terms of proper structural things, like, how could there be an ICE if there was no George W. Bush?
Right, without the establishment of DHS.
Right, materially. Like, I'm not even talking about the rhetoric and the spiritual and the essence of man and humanity. I'm talking about ICE existed under the compassionate conservative guy, and drone programs existed before then. And like I point out in the piece, lying, believe it or not, Varn, lying as the president existed before Trump. Like, Reagan's whole thing was, it's amazing. It's so crazy to find out that you learn that Reagan was like, oh yeah, you know, welfare recipients, they're just there. And then when he's pressed on it, he's just like, I remember learning this, you know, in my undergrad and now grad school days, but still it's like, you sometimes go into this weird headspace when you listen to these so-called academics and deep thought people, and you think to yourself, am I being gaslit? Because I remember a time when even liberals and conservatives were more open about Reagan's lying. Like, yeah, because now he's presented as a foil sometimes. Like, oh, he was, you know, like, he was very professional and respectable and whatever. You mean the guy who's also some of his cabinet ventured into Trump's cabinet? And also Dick Cheney. I think, you know, Kamala Harris had a tweet, you know, talking about his life when he passed. It's like, are we seriously doing this just because he was not completely pro-Trump, which would be kind of bizarre because I do think he killed more people so far than Trump. So I don't even know how to begin with that. But yeah, the whole essence of like it just spiraling out of nowhere. But that's the essence of even what Lukács has kind of warned about when it comes to certain elements of liberal historiography. Like, there's no material basis to it. It's more like things that are wrong with the system. This is something I hear in movies sometimes. It's a cyclical human decay. Like every you know few centuries we get authoritarianism. Every few centuries people come back to their base nature. No, fascism as a modern form start to exist in the early 20th century. We gotta start with something material. It's not the same. Native Americans were not creating death camps in any capacity. It's also like an FU to everyone before and after who've done different things, and it's also, again, a way to also kind of let people off the hook. So that's just, anyway, that's my, the whole idea of the train spiraling, like the Walter Benjamin, the train of modernity coming out of nowhere. To me, that's always my only reaction to these things. Like, instead of coming off tracks, it just bursts through a cave that no one expected. And that's sometimes what I think of liberal historiography. It's like, oh my God, it's a train. It's like, okay, what you're you're presenting the train that has angel wings. Like, you're not telling me how the train works. Like, it came from somewhere substantive.
It's bizarre that maybe people who contributed to the ideologies that made fascism possible, like I don't know, Jim Crow or the U.S. South racial codes. I actually do bristle when people call them fascist, not because I think they're good, not because I don't even think fascists used them, because they did.
Right.
I'm always like, yeah, but that's when you do that, what you're actually doing is pretending that, like, there's not some continuity between the other historical ideologies, primarily liberalism, but even some communism, unfortunately, and fascism, like that isn't picking up on certain other things. And that's why I'm always torn when I try to refer to like whatever Trumpism is, because I'm like, okay, so yeah, you're right. People who told me that this was going to be a repeat of Trump 1 in terms of content, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, somehow you got people who are supposedly even on the good team, like now people believe like Marjorie Taylor Greene's somehow going to be just because she's bucking Trump, but also asking get Nick Fuentes on like CNN is a good thing, from the same people who were like mortally terrified of a much less effective racial nationalist, Richard Spencer, just 6 years ago. And they're just like, oh, we don't know how this happened. And I'm like, you don't? You can't see the continuity here?
Bernie Sanders, not to defend Bernie Sanders because he is a Zionist, but like the way that Hillary Clinton maneuvered identity against him to sort of make him sound out of step, not saying the exact same wordage. I'm not saying that, because she's a let's say an amazing wordsmith, but to say this, okay, remember Samantha Bee, the Canadian comedian? She I remember I didn't really watch her show that much. I was a fan. There was a moment where I was like, oh my God, I gotta absorb all of this amazing content. But I do remember some, this will make sense. There was one like Daily Show-esque sort of report she did, where in the end there's this young white woman, who, to describe her, looks really like she went through a tough life. And I think, if I remember correctly, the way that the news report happened was to sort of show this woman as being ridiculous and that town being ridiculous. Like, they're like refusing to vote for Hillary or something. And then in the end, she does a voiceover where like, she must be some sort of like nationalist or something weird or something. And then she says, I'm voting for Bernie Sanders or something. So they were like dumping on this girl for choosing Sanders. So I'm just telling you, that's the messaging, right? This same person, Samantha Bee, while she's dumping on this white woman, this young white woman, she goes off and makes friends with Glenn Beck. Remember, she does a whole episode basically saying we can come together, because there was a brief moment where he realized that Trump was bad, and now he's back, doing everything to say Trump is, Christian God or whatever. But what I'm saying, to your sense, not only were they kind of being alarmist about, or rightfully so, to be honest, about Richard Pencer, because he's a piece of shit, but they were not just doing that to him, which he deserved. They were kind of suggesting that it's bad for social democrats to talk about issues in a certain way, because those kind of framing was somehow adjacent to this kind of talk. Now, to what you're saying, Nick Fuentes, though, and not just Nick Fuentes, there's already pundits on CNN. I forgot, Kevin Anderson or Ken. There's one guy who I think on Twitter I saw recently. I realized who he was who talks wild shit. Like when Mamdani, a moderate in any normal country, was running, he was tweeting stuff about Western civilization coming attacked, by quote unquote Islamist communists, whatever that means. So it's like, no, it's not even just about Richard Spencer, who deserved all the shunning in the world, and who himself, of course, began to also say, I voted for Democrats, I guess. But Nick, it's not even that. It was like, you've had people who are Bernie Sanders, being told that they were insufficiently a certain thing. Well, now we look ahead, and now Nick Fuentes, who is this anti-Semite, who is this crazy person, incel person, who's like being feeded by, yeah, you're right, like certain people saying, hey, give him a chance, or having weird memes saying, the things you can't say are the things that are the truth, or something bizarre, which is also something that Elon Musk liked to say, like, you can't say certain things, therefore that thing is actually true. It's like, well, not really sure about that one. I'd like to live in a world where certain things are not said. So yeah, it's kind of it's interesting, let's just say, where we've ended up.
It is actually telling that the flattening of these distinctions, both within the right, but also between groups that aren't right. Like, I remember the equation of populism, which is not something that I actually support. I'm noted not a populist, but like
same.
But like this equation of populism to basically illiberalism, aka well, it's fascism light, and I'm just like, okay, so Huey Long and Ernst Neddick and Rom and Giovanni Gentile, and they're all the same. Like,
I think there's a book, Elizabeth Sanderson, Roots of Reform. I might be getting the author's name incorrect, but she wrote the book on populism. I read that just a few years ago, actually. And yeah, populism as an actual modern term started with a flawed movement, but a movement that was not fascist, really. It was actually an attempt to do something different. So it is but also it's weird when they say that, because I think it's Cass Sustein or someone like that, or Cass Moody. Yeah, I think he was the one who he's the one who, he's a political scientist who constantly reinforced that connection, that populism is this flattened circle, of just the masses being unwieldy. There's like a mass hysteria fear, like, oh, the mob, right? When it's like, well, one, are you suggesting that technocracy is the only thing then that's good? Because I'm like you, I'm not a populist. I am a Marxist-Leninist. I do think masses can be a bit, like in certain societies, like America, can sometimes be very confusing. But I'm also not of the type to say every form of mass engagement is just one step away from fascism or something crazy. It's like, okay, by that regard, then I should never knock on someone's door, because God forbid an old lady will tell me something that I don't like to hear. Like, I don't understand how this is like the same. But I think I remember that 2016 era, because people were doing that quite frequently. And I looked up one of his presentations back in the day. I couldn't get through it, because even though I'm very frustrated with populism, because I don't think that's the angle to take, but I was also doubly annoyed by how he framed the history of populism. I remember this. I think people can look up on YouTube, populism, Cass Moody or whatever. And he was doing this presentation in a dimly lit room. It was actually really nice to look. Like the sound quality is beautiful, so he knew. But everyone ended up being very snarky. They were kind of like chuckling, because they were chuckling at the people. Like, there was points where he said exactly what I just said there, like, populism is when the people, populism is when certain people divide the elites from the people. And I'm like, also, that's so broad. That's a broad lane to call populism. So there could be no interrogation of elitism or what elite power might be. So yeah, it's like it's not like the Russian dolls revealing themselves. It's the opposite effect. It's like just Russian dolls put on top of each other to obscure more and more of the ball that's inside. That's what I feel like some of these scholars have done. Like, in the last 10 years, I really do feel like people think fascism is similar to a lot of other isms, even isms that might be complicated. And furthermore, even in the Trump era, fascism is not revealed to be what it always has been, a class project, a very settler colonial project in America's terms. And in the end, we're left with very bereft ideas, like for a lot of us who are also well-meaning, on how to actually resist, right? Like how do you resist something if you don't clarify what it is, you know? And so like, again, reason why I bring up these things about George Bush, it's not to say, for me, Trump is in my view a fascist, and I am totally freaked out by everything he's done, like everything. Like, I feel extremely suffocated living in America, and I kind of regret in some ways of you know, certain kind of like histories and my parents coming here. Like, I kind of have these moments where I'm like, this kind of sucks. Like, healthcare sucks and everything sucks, and I'm kind of like done, you know, studying these things. This is not really conducive to good mental health. But at the same time, yeah, it's like, I don't know. I just feel like it's an interesting moment where I bring up these things not to say that Trump is somehow not a fascist. My point is the conversation about how we got here has to actually include a history and some conversation about the train having emerged from an actual tunnel. Again, not from like Zeus's head, not from the side of the tunnel, not from like below all of a sudden whacking you in the face. I'm talking about real tracks. What do those tracks look like, bare minimum? And then we can talk about the future of those tracks, where it's headed. Because that's where I can say, hey, we don't know exactly what this is as much as we think, but let me tell you, Trump is not an aberration. He is not an aberration. Stephen Miller is not an aberration. I mean, John Bolton, for Stephen Miller to run, John Bolton and others had to crawl. You know, like there isn't, you know, whatever.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Like, you know, you had David Duke in the 1980s and 90s, like almost win Republican primaries. You had the Dixiecrats in the Democratic Party.
Right.
And just in recent history, like if you want to talk about the pivoting around identity, if you go back to 2008 and look how Hillary Clinton ran, she ran accusing Barack Obama of basically being an identity-obsessed elite.
Yes.
Pivoted in the complete opposite direction in 2016 against Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And if we think about this with Cuomo versus Mamdani in New York, Mamdani, like Cuomo sounded like a total like lunatic nativist from the Bush era towards the last couple of weeks of that campaign.
It sounded like he legit, like, okay, George W. Bush, let's just he killed more people. Like, that's not, the rhetoric is one thing, but to follow the Arpam Dutt, you know, narrative of what fascism, look to their record. So I'm not out here trying to say George W. Bush is like this hollowed blessing. He killed a lot of people. He is a horrible man. And one day, hopefully, he'll be in prison. I doubt that, but hopefully. But he himself actually, on rhetoric, was slightly more chill than Andrew fucking Cuomo was in this 3-month period. Because the AI videos he had were things that even George W. Bush rhetorically wouldn't have done, like Mamdani eating rice with his hand. Like, to me, I was just baffled and losing my mind thinking, what era is this? Like, you're not even doing the standard version of like Western civilization is intact. You're saying he's Muslim, he eats with his hands, and also, did you know that his mom and dad are Indian or Ugandan or something else? And it's like, George W. Bush didn't even do that. Like, he was like, I'm busy happily doing the Crusades, you know, and fumbling here and there saying that. But one of the first things he did after 9/11, I'm not giving any credit. I'm just saying how bad it's been rhetorically, not politically.
No, but he did actually employ. He actually had a more diverse cabinet than the first cabinet of Barack Obama. So, like,
well, also when the 9/11 attacks happened, he went to a mosque and said, "Please, like, Muslims are good." Again, this is like very tricky waters we're in, because none of us are saying George W. Bush is, again, I'm telling you, he's a bad painter and should also be in prison for that. Like, I'm not arguing about anything to recuperate his image. I don't care how many candies he gets from Michelle Obama. That's not what I'm doing. All I'm saying is Andrew Cuomo is actually worse at the beginning phases of the war on terror rhetoric. He was like there was a thing that George Bush, like, civilization needs to be defended. But guess what, guys? Muslims, not so bad. Not sure they're part of our civilization, but they're here. Let's try. You know, like, it's still not good. He was like, Muslims, they all hate Jews. And it was like, what? You're Italian. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, also a guy who, like, would defend Hakeem Jeffries, who was famously one of the first Muslim legislators. Like, it was so bizarre.
It was bizarre.
Like,
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's so true. I forgot about that. It's so bizarre.
The party of like the most, admittedly, some of the most milquetoast Muslim.
Right.
But nonetheless, like, Hakeem Jeffries and Barack Obama are like your key figures, and you're running the
AI
most
videos.
Basic ass xenophobic campaign I've seen, and Islamophobic, almost to the point of like doing Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracies, except
that was what it was.
Muslims, like,
that's what it was. That was what it was. When I saw that, that's the first thing I thought was like, this is where I said the unknown is so the known is this. Really quickly, the known is that what's happening is fascism, because you have these talking points that are very fascist. They just input different data points. That's how fascism works, right? So at one point it was obviously Jews and Roma. I mean, it still is in many ways, but now it's inputted like, oh, Jews, certain kinds of Jews who are pro-Zionist input formula into, like, doing the math meme, input formula with Western civilization. You know, the terminology of Judeo-Christian, that was coming up during the war on terror. That was happening then, so that's not a new formula. But input the thing even like a block that wouldn't fit. Like, let's cut the block, like, force it in now even more, and then take out other blocks, throw them aside, kick them to the floor, and be like, you're not welcome at all, even on a rhetorical level. Like Samuel Huntington himself would be also confused a little bit by this, because he's that raised, but he would also be like, are you really literally also going to the base element of, like, he eats rice with his hands? I am Daisy. Zoran Mamdani, I'm from New York. I'm from Queens. That's where I was also getting a little bit flustered. Like you said, the Judeo-Bolsheviks, but it was like Muslim folks. But also, I was also a little bit like,
folks. Like, it's like
yeah. But I was also thinking, like, when are they going to find out half his family is Hindu too? Like, I'm just waiting for the other shoe because it's going to blow their minds. And it did too. Like, remember when he talked about his aunt being harassed? And there was like a deep dive about that too, which was also very, in effect, Judeo-Bolshevism theory, like, you know, like culture, like, oh, is he really like a Muslim even? And I heard that too. So it's like we've went past the shores of the known. But we are dragging the known with us. Does it make sense? Like, fascism, like, this is not out of nowhere, but it's going somewhere that is quite also ill-defined and quite confusing at times. But Cuomo, chef's kiss to him for doing something that I never thought was possible. Running a campaign that is both incredibly racist and infuriating, but also sometimes just confusing and amusing in its confusion of, like, am I back in high school again with random jocks or something? Like, and it just happens to be Cuomo. Like, I'm Italian, immigration. And then he's like, Mamdani, he eats rice with his hands. Like, what is happening? So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the Judeo-Bolshevik. That's exactly what I thought. This is just basically just now the Muslims are now doing the communism now.
Yeah, anti-Semitic, but the other Semites.
Right.
Like, although that's not true for Mamdani, because he's not actually an Arab.
Yeah. But what would they know? What would they know? Right. One day he's Muslim Brotherhood. Next day he's Hamas. The other day he's just this, like, I can't believe he's. Is he really from Queens? I mean, when I walk through the streets of Queens, there's just brown people, and I'm like, that's Queens. Like, what are you talking about?
Been to Queens?
Right. That's like 40, 50 years of Queens. Like, I'll give you if it was like 1820s, 1920s, but this is like 2025. Like, that's like what you're talking about is the corner that I grew up on. Like, it's like, even that rhetoric I feel like was out of step with long-term Queens residents who were not black or brown. Like, I think it was crazy to me. He was digging so deep into his pockets of incredible levels of yeah, you're right, anti-Semitism, except it's
The other Semites.
yeah. It's like, is this happening? Like I was sweating. I was like watching these videos and be like, this cannot be real.
I mean, it is this weird moment. I mean, the other thing is, I mean, like the pundits don't know what to make of it. Like on one hand, we've seen Israel become more and more, I mean, frankly, fascistic. And we've seen anti-Semitism be weaponized in a way that makes it meaningless, which I actually think has made, I mean, I really do believe this. On the right, it has made the equation of anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism has actually made actual anti-Semitism more popular on certain elements of the right, because they can't really fight it on the same grounds that you can on the left, where you can say, well, you know, Israel is an imposed settled colonial nation.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, like and its project has you know, despite what the historical left has been on it, which I will admit is historical left has been all over the place in Israel depending on the time, but that we now would definitely see that the Palestinians are engaged in a national liberation movement, blah blah blah. Like we would not equate that to like world Jewry, but
there's now world Islam or whatever that is. Like it's the same thing.
Right. Whereas like on the right now you have this weird sort of talk about like you got people who are openly acting with fascistic instincts like Laura Loomer. But now actually talking about the quote right-wing Nazi problem, which I will admit, all of a sudden you've in the month of November alone, there have been 4 Hitler was good scandals. Amongst Republican staffers, including someone that Trump tried to appoint to a position that required Senate confirmation. So, like, it's not that it's not there, but if you just think, latent authoritarianism fascism is just about anti-Semitism, and I'm like, well, no, it's not.
Right. Well, the thing about Israel too, so really quickly, I don't want to say the simple way of saying it because, you know, it's complicated, but Israel is just a settler colonial outpost and has acted as such, especially since, I know the Nakba happened in 48, and previously to that you had the Haggadah and all these different like Israeli or pro-Zionist forces killing, maiming, taking land. So the process has always been fascistic. But at least on the American side of things, they've really been the American settler colonial outpost since at least the 60s, when things really coalesced in that way materially, right? Like, you know, the past of that is a little bit more complicated. Even the British were a little bit sometimes annoyed, even though they were still being very British about it. Like, we trust this, do your thing, because we don't want the Arabs to be involved in anything. But to put it simply, they're just a settler colonial empire. There doesn't need to be any other deeper thought than that. The Israeli society has completely become fascistic to its core. Poll after poll shows that, you know, there's protests here and there happening, and some good Israelis, however few, but overall they're polling, even when they're saying, I don't agree with Netanyahu, their main beef is that he's not doing enough, like of bombing or taking or moving the process along, you know? So that's Israel. But then the other side of it is I got Palestinian statehood, Palestinian liberation of the entire land. What happened to South Africa needs to happen to Israel. But what you're saying too is like a mind fuck, because Laura Loomer is such a devastatingly fascist figure in her own right. I mean, the thing she said, she's the reason why, or one of the reasons why, people from Gaza are not able to come to the US as easily, because she raised the alarm of Gazan people coming through the airport looking for help here. So she is a horrible human being. Her only problem is that, like you said, her association of Nazism is only purely, strictly, and politically through the lens that it's about anti-Jewish hate.
Mm-hmm.
But then but really importantly, she only talks about anti-Jewish hate in relation to Israel, not in relation to anything that's happening. Say Jewish people are anti-Zionist too, who are being called like fake Jews. Like I forget the comedian's name. I forgot his name. Adam something maybe. He has a show that's like relatively like popular, and he's a comedian. I forgot his name, but if someone in the chat knows who he is, I think people know he's Jewish, and he had that famous interview with Richie Torres where he was like, "Dude,
yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Adam Freeland."
Yeah. I don't watch all his shows, but I'm just saying that was a huge clip for everyone to know. They know who he is. He was basically, can you just at least identify with me? Like, I'm Jewish. I'm kind of freaking out about my identity being taken over by this fascistic state that's also inviting, he didn't say this, but inviting actual fascist parties from Europe into Israel because they just hate immigrants, coded Muslim, coded brown. Who's that guy, the British first guy? Tommy Robinson. He was in Israel.
Tommy Robinson.
He was in Israel. But all I'm saying really quickly, Adam Freeland was called a fake Jew by by the former CNN host Cuomo. He was called a fake Jew to his face. Cuomo's not Jewish. Calls him a fake Jew. That's not even a tenth of the controversy that Laura Loomer has with everything else. So there's like this weird blend of we've entered fascism on so many levels where it's no longer say Jews, but it's Muslims overall. Like now Muslims are the puppeteers of every kind of social justice activism. And then finally, yeah, you can still be anti-Jewish, but you have to wait for the ones who are anti-Zionist. And then you can just lean in and be as extremely horrible as you can with them. It's like, okay.
Well, I mean, you see this even in weird places you wouldn't expect to see it. Like, there's a former Marxist who I actually I was going to write a book with him when he was a Marxist, and he went through this weird, he went through this weird anti-woke or anti-PC NYC professor secret identity and got outed for it. And then he became the head of the von Mises caucus. His name is Michael Rettenwald. And he started, I mean, like he went from like, we need secular stuff to actively pursuing first anti-Muslim and then actually explicitly anti-Jewish polemics. So the thing is, if you think you're safe, they will come back for you.
Right. Yeah.
Like they're not done.
Right.
Guillaume Faye, to bring this up in Europe. I know I follow the European New Right, which is not neoconservatives, they're mostly post-fascist. Are they're Duganist or whatever. There's you know those people.
Yeah.
There's this group called Grece, GRECE, capitalized in English. It's a French group. Their most famous person in America is Alain de Benoit, who wrote a bunch of Richard Spencer people used to publish him. But anyway, there's a big debate between some of these people on the European New Right between who are the real Semites you should be concerned about. Is it still Jews? And this was in the aughts. This was 20 years ago. Is it still Jews, or is it now Muslims who are the new Jews that are the outside invaders?
Right.
And that we should support the state of Israel.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Partly not because we like Jews.
Right.
We hate them, but we hate
Muslims
these other
more.
Semites
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
Like
that's the Tommy Robinson factor to a degree too. Like, well, they're also bringing in. So there is also, and it's a lot of Palestinians have said this, like Mohammed Al-Kurd, a few others have said this very eloquently, more so than me. There's also through Israel a real problem of fascism among Jews and Jewish supremacy. Like literally, you have towns being razed to the ground in Gaza and maybe in the West Bank. And one of the first things they do is sometimes raise up a menorah, say this is our land. So the association is now with that. And I think Mohammed Al-Kurd and a few others have said this more eloquently, but they're like, yeah, we don't want to always be having to begin every single conversation about our plight as saying we're not anti-Semites. So it's this weird sort of amalgam of things where there is anti-Semitism, and it's bewildering and sometimes difficult to parse out. You have to go through layers of shit to find it, because there's been a lot of work by certain forces to claim the mantle of being we're the true protector of Jews because they hate other groups more in this case. But honestly, there's also a weird thing happening, which is also not, but to the other thing we said, is not surprising when you just think about fascism as a political concept that has to do with certain other principles than just saying anti-Jewish hate, which is obviously in the European context a premier principle for no one's denying that. It's like tier 1 in many, tier 1A, tier 1B, it's one of those. But at the same time, when you look at like Aimé Césaire's, Discourse on Colonialism, to bring it back to the essay a little bit, one of the things he said very, very, very neatly and nicely is that a lot of the things that fascists were doing on the European continent were simply an extension of what was happening for explicitly colonized, and maybe some people who are Jewish but non-white in the colonized world, right? Like the gulags and such. But yeah, we've entered this space that is, again, I keep saying the known is certainly creating some steps for us to get to a certain point, and then we're reaching the unknown of like, what is happening exactly? Because now we're in a space where, yeah, Israel's obviously shown his ass for being what it is. Very willing to work with people who happen to hate Muslims more. That's really just it, right? They have conferences in Israel for far-right parties. Like, hey, we know you don't like us, and we also know you're from countries that have, an actual Nazi legacy. That is what also baffles me, is that the Palestinians are having to pay for the sins of Europe. Like, nothing gets me more sour and annoyed and pissed off than the German heads of state crying about anti-Semitism and then connecting that to Palestine somehow as they're working out of their sins. And I'm like, are you being serious? Like, you are the ones who wiped out your fellow people, and now you're projecting this onto another group that is now going through the same process. But again, the fascism element, this is what I mean. Like, we have to remember, those of us who know a bit of what we're talking about, we have to keep talking about the principles of fascism beyond what is always being sold by an Anne Applebaum or by whoever's popular on the bookshelves,
I mean, if we're actually talking about fairness, who should get, where should the Jewish state have been located? It should have been in fucking Bavaria.
Right. Right. Jesus Christ. Yeah.
And also, there's the U.S. autonomous Oblast in the Soviet Union. There were places, and even during the fascist period, Zionists were actually quite weird on how they actually pivoted towards Nazism and fascism. They were all over the place. But I mean, I've actually, I've gotten in trouble with some left Zionists. I don't really care what they think about my opinions on this, but I'm like, look, it is obvious to me that in many ways, not only are you encouraging anti-Muslim sentiment, you're actually encouraging anti-Jewish sentiment to force us to make Aliyah and go back. Right. So you can use this as a shock troops for this expansionist project.
Also, it's like the same thing about, again, I like Judaism is, I'm Hindu, so it's thousands of years old, but Judaism is also very thousands of years old. Zionism is not thousands of years old.
No, Zionism is modern ideology.
Right. And also at the same time, a lot of Jews, when they first heard about it, they were like, I'm European, I'm English, I'm French, I'm this. Like, I'm not just Jewish. Like, you're also kind of, it is this weird sort of, not to compare it to some authors. Like, there's an author, Jhumpa Lahiri, she's a Bengali author. I am obliged to have read all her work because she's Bengali and I've grown up, but I have deep problems with her work because she always does this thing about identity that is quite partial, unintentionally, with a very quote unquote white reading of Americanism. If you follow, like she's a lot of her characters, some of whom when you read these stories for the first time, it's quite moving, but when you read them for the 20th time, you're like, you gotta move on to another story archetype. All of them are like, I'm an Indian person. I'm saying this distinctly, like Indian, like I would describe him as Indian American. Let's just say Indian or Indian American, growing up in New Jersey even, but I'm pulled between the two poles of my American side and my Indian side. Now,
Yeah, honestly,
it's the same thing as Zionism is kind of saying. You have a Jewish side and then maybe something else. But it's like, no, I've been here, or Jews would say, like, I've been on this continent for thousands and thousands of years. I'm here.
I mean, one of the things that's interesting, American Jewish life's relation to Zionism, even after the Shoah, Corey Robbins has talked about this, and Norm Finkelstein's talked about this too. It took into the middle 60s for Zionism to be so crucial to American Jewish life.
Yes.
And it took almost to the 1980s for Zionists to take over most American Jewish institutions. It finally alienate the old Yiddishite people and all that. And the other thing that you have to, like, Zionism initially had a response in Jewish culture that was twofold. One, you had semi-assimilationists who was like, yeah, I'm a Jewish, but I'm here. And the other, you also had ultra-Orthodox, who many have now become Zionists, but who actively rejected Zionism as a heretical modern concept. I mean, you still hear that with Neutral Kartai in some of the Hasidic houses in New York.
Right.
But, like, I don't know, Chabad has gotten over it. I find this fascinating. I also find it interesting that people aren't talking about when everyone's like, oh, it's such a great democracy. It's like, if it's such a great democracy, why has there been a mass exodus voluntarily of liberal Jews into Europe and America in specific in the last 15 years?
Yes, I've mentioned this, like saying about the internal shifting politically has also kind of been part of the factor has been this fact that some people were like, oh, Netanyahu won again, I'm out. Like, I don't want to do this. But also, it's not democracy for the also very simple reason. Not only is it occupied territory in the formal part, but you are literally having to adjust your politics to leave out a majority of the population from having real democracy, instill policies that affect them. Like, I know people like to say, well, the Israeli army left Gaza, but yeah, I'm pretty sure for a long time they still determined what food got in. Like, I think that's pretty important. And in the West Bank side, military tribunals as a Palestinian, whether you're a secular Christian, Jewish, or of course Muslim, you are beholden to that. So there's also that issue. And then Lebanon is not. Every country is deeply flawed, but I think the most annoying part is also this Western civilization thing of like, well, we're also very, very, women can wear what they want. Lebanon?
Have you been to Lebanon?
Right. Like, what are you talking about?
Or even Egypt. I lived in Egypt for 2 years. Women can wear what they want.
Right,
yes, you see people in niqab. Yes, you see people in burqas. But you actually mostly don't.
Right.
You even see him in a job. I mean,
well, there's no state policy asking for that. I mean, that's the whole. Yeah, it's like it's been a part of even Nasser's like laughter. Like, I remember watching a clip of him. I know he's sometimes all over the place, but one of the clips I watched a long time ago of him in black and white, I found it very funny. Was he was just doing like a meeting. It was a public one with a lot of like people in this party, and he was talking about this man, I think from the Muslim Brotherhood at the time before he banned them, coming to him and saying, hey, we need some real strict laws on women's rights or on what women can wear. And I think he said something a joke, but he like laughed at him. But what I'm saying is, like, there's so much of again, back to history, there's so much of reworking and cutting out and honestly bleaching of history that is required for us to be here. And then there's so much that we have to do, not for everybody, because again, in America, there is some bright examples of, say, Arab Americans, Palestinians, of course, with the Mamdani effect, even though he's a moderate, but even the little bit of like resistance he gave to politics around Israel, I am very convinced it did a lot to bring out new voters that otherwise did not come out. There is a bright spot that way.
In the most Jewish city in America, I might actually.
Right.
It's just the point. Like, it's just like, it's like, well, everyone's getting sick of this Zionist bullshit.
No, it's true. Well, I would want to also argue, like, the Asian population that came out for him, because he's a Queens guy. It's frustrating because it's complicated even there. Like, you don't want to give him too much credit because he will disappoint. He is not the panacea. And again, we've been here before in many different ways, and we still need to do certain other things before we get satisfied with any of this. I don't care how big the city. We literally had, London I know the politicians are different, but we had someone in a similar, not a similar vein, but something similar, like who's Muslim and different and on the left-leaning side of things, be taken, the mayor of there. Not much has changed. I think Mamdani will be better, but still, there's a lot of conversations to be had. But he did something that again represents another node of punditry. Another node of what punditry misses, because in their view of also how to beat back Trumpism, oftentimes it has to do with we just need to we need to talk to that lost Cuomo voter. Let's just say, the exact who feels lost between the Democrats of new and the Republicans of now. And it's like, where does he, but it's like, Mamdani's like, yeah, no, there's a whole bunch of unmolded people who are either saying, yeah, what you said, are kind of done with Zionism, even if they don't know what to name. They're just done with that, something of it being in their face. Or tons of people who are South Asian and Arab, because New York City is that. It's a very Asian heavy city, very South Asian heavy city. And I can tell you with my own family experience, a lot of people were excited. Even those of us who moved on from the city were just like, hey, Mamdani, his mom is Mira Nair. He's Indian. I was like, sometimes that's all it took, but they were also very like, his dad is a scholar. Some of them knew who he was, that kind of thing. And then the groups involved really quickly, they're not like nobody. Desi's Rising Up and Moving is a very grassroots, radical, in the best way group that is very fundamentally, they view the essence of their politics as really moving politics beyond electoralism, but they got on board early on when he was still like losing. All that to say, the pundits don't give a shit about any of that either, because they don't want to deal with that, because to them that's also scary. That's how the flattening also takes place. The flattening is actually quite honest, right? It's sincere. They are scared of any kind of uprising, even if it's very, very moderate. It was moderate. The people in this election did everything that these pundits would want, which is vote. They voted. And they're still like, gotta get out of New York. Like, it's nonstop. So yeah, it's really fascinating that way too.
I mean, this is an interesting stat. Like, Cuomo lost with more votes than the last two mayors, including of New York, de Blasio and Eric Adams, won with, because that many people were motivated and came out to vote. It was one of the highest vote count elections in New York history.
Right.
And not just when I say that, of course, yes, New York has more population in the past, but also like as a percentage of population.
Right.
This was a highly motivated mayoral
upper 60%.
I barely voted mayor. I mean, I do vote for the mayor, but
right.
Like I don't, even out here, I barely think about it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I gotta pick which Democrat sucks the least in the primary. Yeah, I care. And usually my guy loses, but it is what it is, right? So, and people are like, oh, Varn, you voted. Yeah, I mean, I don't vote for Democrats at the national level, like,
right,
hardly ever.
Yeah.
But I do participate in local politics, and the Mamdani campaign was fascinating to me because, on one hand, it matters on the level of breaking this punditry wall. On the other hand, like, New York doesn't actually, like, the mayor of New York is not actually going to do a damn thing about U.S. national policy on wars.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's very true. It's very true. Yeah.
So I'm always like, what are you guys even afraid of? And I've said this to someone else. I was arguing with someone I was like, look, Mamdani is probably going to do better than most of the progressive candidates that we've had in the past. But most progressive candidates hit a hard wall with the municipal bonds. And I don't see that not being a problem for Mamdani.
Right.
But my point is, like, you guys treated this like okay, Brandon Johnson in Chicago, not endorsed by the DSA, admittedly, but actually did, I think, seek it out.
Maybe. Yeah.
I can't remember. I need someone who's actually part of the Chicago DSA chapters to tell me.
Yeah.
But definitely has tried to make forays with them. That's for sure he's done that.
Yes.
And no one attacked him the way we've attacked Mamdani. And these are, and I brought out the stuff with Hakeem Jeffries. These are the same people who were celebrating Hakeem Jeffries as the first Islamic legislature during the George W. Bush administration.
Right, right.
And I find this like fascinating because another thing is like, oh, we need to reach out to the Cuomo voter to win him from Trump, and I'm like, well, Trump endorsed Cuomo,
right?
So what does that even mean? Like
well, the thing is, like, it's the leadership of the Democratic Party, the leadership, everybody in the GOP, pretty much, except for maybe, I know you mentioned her before, and she's obviously still like, for me, like, keep at a twice arm's length, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. She did give some credit to Zoran, saying like, he's America first and whatever. Maybe she's the most honest one of this, this ilk. But except for a few of her type, all these people, for me, they were really being very honest. If they didn't quite see it as such, maybe they thought they were being extremely politically tactful, except they were having meltdowns and people knew. But they were being honest on many things, actually. What they fear isn't really just Mamdani. They just fear the constituency that he was beginning to accumulate, like beginning to have. Like the thing is this: Pete Buttigieg, right? Oh my God, the hero we've all waited for. As some of us call him, Mayo Pete, because he's very, very white bread. But I remember he was on a podcast and they asked him what he thought, and the first feeling I got is like, who cares what Pete Buttigieg thinks? But the thing that really, the reality when I sat with it is like, why they're even having him on certain podcasts and Mamdani never will, is because Pete Buttigieg, for some people, represents the ideal still, like in honest terms. Like they do, okay, Trump is bad, which is true. So to them, they don't like him. But they don't like him for the same reasons you and I don't like him, which is he's the complete, explicit, tortured version of everything we've already hated about American politics. It's more like they don't like him because he is a bumbling, fumbling typhoon of nonsense that's going to make the whole house of cards fall apart. So that's what they don't like about him. And then, so they want someone to replace him, but no, not Mamdani, because it's all these brown people, like, people like my family or whatever, like people in Queens I know are just, they're coming. And to the Hakeem Jeffries part, this is crucial. And this is where Marxist analysis helps and real anti-colonial substantive analysis. Hakeem Jeffries is very AIPAC heavy. He is very pro-American empire heavy, whether AIPAC or not. He is a good Muslim, as Zoran's father has made work of, the good-bad Muslim dynamic. He is a good Muslim. That is not completely unfounded to me. I've come across many good brown people here and there who are just like, yay, I'm accepted. The only thing I had to do was not care about everyone else. So Hakeem Jeffries, in my book, that's what dovetail. That's what's the secret sauce. The irony of all ironies is Mamdani is not even that radical. He is a very a moderate guy, and already, like, recently he came out in favor of, I think, Jennifer Tisch returning as NYPD commissioner, the heiress to, I think, Lowe's Media, Lowe's Theater, or Lowe's, or something like that. Like, she's a freaking nepo baby, and now she's the NYPD commissioner under Eric Adams, and she's just back in, and I think she's a Zionist too. She was very, very pro destroy the encampment. So you're right. There's also a little bit of like the essence of like confusion on our part, because they're also like, do you guys know how to even do this well? But this is what happens when, Doug Henwood had that amazing article a few years ago about how the elites we have. This is, again, not like Doug was not saying the elites are so much better back then and we love them. It's just more like capitalism and colonialism, after a certain amount of time, also gives rise to the worst among them. So it's a convergence of the old stories mixing in with the new dumb people. Because Elon Musk is dumb. Elon Musk is also bad at this. Like, he's doing AI videos on Twitter that would make Andrew Carnegie cringe if he came back and didn't have a heart attack the moment he stepped out of that time machine. But
well, this is what big theme of my show lately is like our elites, and I don't mean this like our prior elites were good,
right,
but they were competently evil.
Yes.
Like you're right. Like, why do people like Democrats? Democrats are more competent in actually managing the empire, but like Biden did many of the same things that Trump did. He just did it with informal channels. But even then, as I pointed out, he couldn't reestablish the old networks and channels, even of the 1990s. So,
can I just say one thing? Biden did also, but on Israel, this is the thing about Biden. This is why I feel a lot of the Silicon Valley types moved to Trump's camp. Biden actually represents the fact that the Democrats with Biden couldn't do that anymore, because is like he went on one of these talk shows and said I'm a Zionist. He went on a talk show before he completely had his brain melted through his nose. Like, he went on a talk show and said I'm a Zionist. That also is not something that other presidents have come out and said formally. He did that. Yeah. And then Trump just ran with it.
Well, here's the crazy thing. I saw Eric Adams talking about he tried to always do right by Israel as the mayor of New York. And I was literally like, that's the kind of shit David Duke would falsely accuse people of in the 90s. Like, and you're doing it openly. And I say that because like it just leads to every weird conspiracy thinking.
Right.
And it is this weird moment where I'm with you, because I'm like, there's a lot of anger on the right about Israel too.
Right.
And it could have come out in some weird, anti-imperialist right-wing way. Such things have happened in America in the past. But they do tend to rhyme strongly with European xenophobia for obvious reasons, I think. And so I'm like, I'll say, are we going to be in this weird place where like, we saw Nick Fuentes doing this today. Like, we need to reach out to the left to form a populist coalition in the fight Israel. And I'm like, I've seen this before. But also like in a way that like this is getting airing in a way that it never would have in the 1990s. And I'm like, they're like, oh, he's a good communicator. And I'm like, yeah, he is a good communicator, but also like he isn't that impressive.
No.
So why has it happened? I'm like, well, these elites have been protected. And I say elites. Marxism is not an elite theory.
Yeah.
So I want to be clear on this. What I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the managers of capital have been removed from even internal competition for so long.
Exactly.
They are kind of dumb. Like,
their muscles for basic trickery have atrophied. Right. Their muscles for being even I know Bill Clinton did not get a high vote. He really ran on the coattails in his first try on Ross Perot. I get that.
Right.
But even he knew how to play a saxophone, I guess, in that era. But now it's like Joe Biden, like that photo of him with the Rashid Khalidi book under his arm, but it was upside down. Do you remember that? There was a vote.
Yes.
So people were like more confused by that, because that was like really in the sauce of this horrible genocide. It was not the previous, it was not a lead up to it where you could sort of say, look, I was reading this book. What I'm doing is different. So it's like, dude, someone in a different era. Not in some ways, I'm very happy about this, right? Like, I'm happy that they're so bad, because like even with the Epstein thing, take it away. Do your magic. Just like when people are like, oh, Democrats are going to be involved. Take it away. Just run with it. Be as stupid as you can in covering up the sex crimes that these elites have been doing for decades and decades, probably. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy that Biden was a bumbling, fumbling, stupid idiot, because a plurality of Democrats who chose not to vote, Democrats, not Republicans or independents, a plurality of them did that because of Palestine. And now you're seeing in the polling data, for Democrats at least, there was still sympathy for Israel, like not that long ago. Now it's like, maybe I'm giving gracious, like plus 10 maybe for Palestine. Like, thank you for doing it. But to what you're saying, no, also it's kind of amusing, because there's times where people ask me questions about like, why are they doing this? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't like Nicki Minaj, and I give credit to Black Liberation Media for picking up on this, because I was like, they have an amazing morning show I listen to while I exercise. Like, I have a bunch of health conditions, so every day I have to exercise. and they mentioned Nicki Minaj. I had no idea what was happening, so I looked into it. Yeah, she, I think, went to the UN to talk about the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. Now, if George W. Bush did this and wanted to do it right, I think he would pick someone, yes, maybe African American, maybe Black, but they would not pick Nicki Minaj, someone who's maybe popular to this day and try to that, even though she is, of course, very, very, like, she's sold a lot of records. I just know too much about this, but that was also a huge red flag to me because the optics of it was so insane. I was like, my partner was like, why do this? And I said to her, I actually don't know. I don't know. I don't understand. There's parts of it oh, I know why they picked this crazy person, like Anna Navarro. I know, because she can speak to the beauty of American democracy and how the Sandinistas were the real terror. Even though she annoys me to bits, fine. But now it's let me pick this person I've never heard of, who's in the bowels of the right-wing neospace, the media space.
Named Cat Turd.
Yeah, right.
The fact I have to take people like Cat Turd and Destiny, who still go by those names, furiously in the national discourse.
I'm actually sweating. I forgot about that. Cat Turd. It's also to add to that, I forgot about that, and I also don't want to even bring it up to my friends of mine who are more normal than me, because it's also how do I because I don't want to answer questions I don't know the answer. Why did they pick Cat Turd? I was I don't know. I don't understand why they did that.
Well, I mean, it's just I'm a teacher. I work with mostly normal, only semi-politicized people.
Right.
When we talk about the national discourse, they're like, "What is going on?" I'm just I don't know, man. Because they're you always know all this stuff, and
yes.
I'm just I follow it, but I can't explain it to you either.
Right.
I mean, the president just told someone to shut up, Piggy, on mic. Maybe we should quit voting 80-year-olds and nepo babies into power, but we. But what do you mean? And I'm well, look, even these these tech billionaires, right, they're all transparent con men, and didn't run profitable businesses in the first place.
Right.
So
also the what's that guy's name? The Palantir guy, Alex Karp. Mm-hmm. There's clips of him doing the sword, doing the sword job. With that one woman next to him, awkwardly, nervously laughing.
Doing the sword. There's him talking about releasing drugs on and dropping fentanyl on his investors who are shorting him. And I'm just that's totally a way to inspire confidence in your investors, is to threaten to kill them. I
forgot. Yeah, even in my small, tiny mind, when it comes to economics, I'm just barely. I'm trying to stretch out peanut butter as a snack for myself, and I'm just just doing that for a little. And I'm I wonder what the brilliant minds have come up next. And he's just yeah, I want to kill my investors. And it's whoa, 101 hardcore hustle. Oh my God, Gary V, come in the room.
You literally have a market cap on these companies that is 100 years of their projected revenue. This was true for Nvidia, which is 100 years of their projected of revenue would equal their market cap right now. And I'm just y'all are dumb. I'm not normally. I mean, yes, I yell at people that are stupid. It's normally about beliefs that I don't agree with. But this is not a belief issue. I'm as a capitalist, the fact it's taken you this long to freak out. I'm just an English teacher, right, and I've been what are you doing?
I freak out on a monthly basis looking at certain things. Why aren't you? No, it's true. Even when they talk about Alex Karp also said, his whole thing, even with Mark Zuckerberg, they do this whole masculinity dance. They've been really into now doing MMA fighting or trying to pretend they're into it. I'm okay, maybe for one random weirdo guy amongst his friends, he's dog, I'm into Mark Zuckerberg again. This guy is amazing. But for a lot of other people, say half the population of women, this is really weird. Like, this is not good investor behavior. Like, they used to be, I don't want to be like All in the Family, kind of like those two white people singing and dancing at the beginning of like all, but it's like there used to be a je ne sais quoi to the way they would hold these beliefs sometimes behind closed doors, than just like laying it all out there and being Alex Karp, and also with a peep squeak voice, like being like, masculinity, guys are just not into, like, what did he even get from the Democrats, because that's where I am from. Like, he still is harping that tune of like, I'm a Democrat, but I'm like, dude, I'm a guy. I'm being honest with you. I view myself as, I identify as a dude. Like, I'm being honest, but I would like to have healthcare. I would like to have more peanut butter, I guess, or like more money to spend on. Like, I'm not concerned about a sword that you have in your stupid office. Like, you can't even pretend a little bit with me. Like, you can't just like trick me a bit. Yeah.
It feels like somehow the people that ran the like all the D&D nerds just took the mask off and became it's a wild time, and the media, I will say this, the media seems, and I actually don't just mean legacy media like CNN, media, by also I mean TikTok and everything else, seems completely unable to handle this. Like, to bring it back to our original point, like it's like that, it's like they're either whitewashing or they're just as baffled as we are. Like,
I'm just writing those, dude. Those are the two polls: whitewashing or baffling. Like, there are a few. Like, again, I encourage people to obviously watch this channel, but Black Liberation Media is a great space for these conversations because they always connect those really important dots. But other than these few areas, it is truly that. It's like, it's this like whitewashing of previous administrations, which have been have killed still more people, and then you also have a baffling of like, sir, like to whatever person's in front of them, like a political scientist maybe who knows something, or I'm in the political science field, by the way, for everyone who thinks I'm taking shots at the field, I'm in it. But someone who's like, can you explain Andrew Cuomo's AI decisions or something? And it's like, I don't know. But it's like, that's the point. It's like, this is what happens to a U.S. society bereft of a real substantive left that it itself suppressed and killed off for a while, and hasn't been able to grow as fast to keep pace with the monsters that same system has created. Like, materialism is what's happening here. I'm not talking about like a very vulgar sense of like everything that a social position of a person tells you how they vote. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, you grow up in a society where materially you're not that likely still to be socialized with a truly communist, Marxist, or left-leaning perspective all your life. So that's a material lack.
Dirty reformist perspective, even.
Yeah, exactly. It's creeping in with like Mamdani. Like, again, it's not about him. It's about like all the other factors, like Drum and all these groups. But that's not everywhere. It should be everywhere. But it's not still reaching the same pitch as what we need to. Like, okay, I remember when Biden got elected, people I even really looked up to, still do, we're kind of even saying things about like how this is going to be the New Deal 2.0.
Yeah, God, I remember this too.
I remember
it baffled me.
And I was thinking about that the other day because I was preparing for this interview, and I was thinking, I was just going through my Rolodex of like trauma, and I was thinking like, like, wonder what Biden, like, what's Biden's story all about? And I was like, oh my God, like, it was like hitting like, Vietnam veteran like images of like ghosts of like, I'm like, oh my God, there was a moment where people I trusted said this is going to be New Deal 2.0. And there was a brief moment of people saying, we're done with neoliberalism. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lo and behold, we had a billionaire standing during meetings at the White House saying, I'm going to get rid of this department. Oh, I made a mistake. It wasn't that department. I'm just watching it on Al Jazeera being like, is this alive? Is this really a live meeting about which department to cancel by a billionaire? Like a capitalist? And what is happening? Like, what happened to the New Deal 2.0? What happened to any of that? I know that already is a flawed tenor to have because you need to really think beyond it. But still, what happened to any of that? Like, Biden was on the picket lines. I thought that was cool. It was nice. But then it was like, he also lost his mind and wanted to kill all the Palestinians possible for whatever vision in his head. So I don't know what happened. So yeah, it's a curdling line, blood curdling symptom of just neoliberalism eating through the fabric of American life to the point that every monster that's spilling out is part of that system and is also creating new horrors along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. I mean, what's interesting about this is people think I'm always a doomer about this stuff, but I'm like, actually creates a lot of space. It does create a lot of space to maneuver. It's not easy to know how to maneuver in the light of all this. It's not, I mean, but for example, I mean, what you brought up Zionism, for all that we're talking about anti-Semitism, all the craziness around that, even amongst right-wingers, Democrats, it's overwhelmingly supported Palestinian, except for the leadership.
Right.
And then amongst right-wingers, it's like 50-50 now.
Yeah.
Which is also unheard of.
Yes.
Yes. Which I think also when as the baby boomers finish dying off, tragically or not, what we're gonna be left with is trying to deal with because I think like a lot of the Zionists are just gonna go away.
I see. Yes.
But because the biggest the biggest divider isn't even ideology on that; it's age.
Right. Yes.
So it's just we're in this strange place where we actually have, I don't personally want to see this massive like rebirth of traditional European anti-Semitism.
Right.
But I also think it's like not a bad thing that like me saying like, hey, Palestinians are also kind of people is like that's not as controversial I'm not talking about amongst leftists.
Right.
Like I'm talking about it with normal people at work.
Right.
Like are people who are like, well, I don't know that I like Hamas, but would I do anything differently in their circumstances? No.
Right.
Like, that's actually a common sentiment at my job.
Right.
Like,
what you're
night
saying,
and day different than even 5 years ago.
Well, what you're saying too, like, so Palestinian, because it makes me really upset. Like, I get quite emotional about this issue because, I mean, to be quite fair, like a lot of it resonates. So there's a couple of things that happen with my mind when I think about Palestine. One is, I've interviewed people about this very early on, learning through them about not just the past struggles, but like very early on, just learning from people how they've lost entire families during this latest genocide, like overnight, right? I can't even fathom that. Like I've had situations where I've lost people I really cared about over the last 2 years or so, a year ago, and in a very tragic way too. And it's not the one-to-one, one is very visibly political, but to lose anyone, one person, one soul in your family overnight is crazy, right? Like I don't know how you can wake up.
Lose like
12,
13, 14, most of your extended family and your immediate family in one day.
One day you're maybe I have this relation, plus I have this similar relationship with like how my family still Zooms with people or Skypes randomly and forces the phone in my face to talk to an aunt that I love but I haven't talked to in a while. But to go from that to complete silence, that is untenable to me. I don't know how you do that. So to me, that's why it's so symbolic and yet material. And of course, the colonizing factor. Like again, the story is simple. Palestine is a colonized point. I'm Bengali. I'm Indian American. I'm Bengali, and Bengal has had several famines. The British, who knew, were terrible colonizers and people, and then the British over there. So there's that dividing line. But I want to say that we live in a time where to be Palestinian, we live in a time where the media and leading politicians use Palestinian as a slur,
right?
Which makes it. That's why I say that's why I say we live in a time of horrors and potential, because that's the horror. That is worse than even the beginning phase of the war on terror. No one was pinpointing Palestinians specifically back then. Right. No one was saying, oh, Chuck Schumer is a Palestinian. And then no one is also not saying no one in the leadership saying that's bad. Like someone would have said maybe something, like even John McCain with his lazy ass and him being a complete, war criminal. He said, well, still was racist, but he said like, oh no, ma'am, Barack Obama's not Arab, which is also still saying Arabs can't be family people. But what I'm saying, the daylight of anything normal is shut in the leadership sense, right? Like Palestinian is being used as a slur. I keep saying this because I am brown, but I am not Palestinian. I cannot fathom what it's like to grow up Palestinian in a society where leading figures that you're supposed to either contend with are literally using your people's identity as a slur. But on the turnaround effect of what you said, but a lot of people, again, not everyone, a lot of people get that, including the same constituencies themselves who are Arab or Muslim who are affected by these things, right? So that's the dual logic of this era. There's a sense of, well, there's a regression, to say the least. History is not a eternal flight upward. This is what I tell my students. Like, give me evidence as to why you think this era is progress. I do tell that to them. Because I'm like, this is not enough to just tell me the rosy story of racism is, because they also bring it up themselves. They contradict themselves when they talk to me in different weeks, right? They're like, yeah, this happened to me, or this writing is very real to me. And so I bring this conversation up. But then there is something to be said. I also tell them really pointedly at times when they're getting themselves a bit too nihilistic. I say, but listen, if you look at the numbers, even Trump's victory, even though this latest one was more of a majority, he won the popular vote. It's not fascism. Right-wing authoritarianism is not mass psychosis entirely.
No, and it's also not even like as I always tell people about the Trump victory. Yeah, I don't really care about the diehard Trumpers,
right?
Because I don't think that's why he won.
Right.
I think why he won is a bunch of people felt that the Democrats failed so bad that they should stay home.
Yes.
And then a bunch of other people were like, well, the Democrats are lying to us about economics. We, for some reason, I don't.
Let's just give this a shot, even though they're crazy.
Yeah, let's give this a shot. Right. And a lot of those constituencies, when everyone's like, I go on, I like to go on liberal social forums, so I get on Reddit. Another thing that used to be full of chuds and is now not. Now the things that are not full of chuds is now full of chuds because we're like that as a society.
Probably.
So like everyone was complaining about, Reddit's so right wing, and if you remember in the first Trump administration, now it's like where all the liberals hang out to hide from X.
I didn't know that. I did not know that actually.
It's not like Bluesky where everyone's still pretending it's 2017 for 2017 Twitter. Forever. But it is well, a lot of the younger liberals are. But it's interesting to see. People will go, oh well, the Trumpers, they're really stupid, and now this will change, and he can do anything. And then people are like, well, yeah, but all those people who came over during the election, Gen Zers, brown people, even a lot of working class white people are like jumping ship. It's only the diehard ideologues who are still really, really dedicated to this. And it's happened very quickly, like in a month. And I'm just like, these windows of opportunity, and I've often accused of being a doomer, and I think sometimes rightly, but I always say this, like, there's a flip side of this.
Right.
It does mean things are changing fast enough that you can actually act.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the action's going to go your way. But one of the things I was telling someone, I hear from leftists all the time, nothing ever happens. And I'm like, where the hell are you? Where, like, if you're saying nothing ever happens right now, like at this moment, where it looks like, it looks like I'm saying this will come out probably in December, early January 2026. We were saying this in the middle, right before, in the middle of November of 2025. But it looks like we're about to enter an economic crazy place. And for the left, the only reason, I'm going to say this seriously, the only reason Marxism came back on the left purview in most of the developed world was the 2007 to 2009 financial crises. And then that also brought a lot of other things back with it that were kind of gone. I mean, like, if you were coming up in left academia and like humanities programs in the aughts, you're reading Derrida in 2005.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a different, and so people are like, oh, I'm like, no, I'm not saying it gets worse before it gets better, because it doesn't necessarily.
Right.
I'm just saying you have the opportunity to act. You know, I'm not an immiserationist, I'm not an accelerationist, I'm none of these things, but in some ways it is good that you can now see that the emperors on both sides are wearing no clothes.
Yeah, no, I wrote down the windows of opportunity. So like even with Palestine, for example, I mean, it goes both ways too. Like obviously things have shifted so fast where we are living through a Holocaust. But I want to also, since I mentioned Palestinian as a slur, obviously for me, the Palestinian people, and to be Palestinian is to be quite the opposite, of course. It's like to be brave and to be part of the legacy of real anti-colonial tradition, right? Like, because in the end, also what's happened recently is Israel couldn't completely take over the Gaza Strip. Things moved very fast, but also what was revealed very fast as well was that a lot of Gazans did the hard work of creating a certain kind of self-sufficiency where they were able to fight back, right? So that's another thing to think about. Like I really do think like that's something I try to tell, like it's very delicate, right? Like what you're describing, like it's a very delicate not dance, but it's a very delicate picture you have to draw, because one part of it is the truth of like there's a Holocaust and ICE is disappearing people and economic craziness is happening and will happen, and who knows, Venezuela, whatever, right? Like there is a delicate picture where you need to draw that out because that's reality. But there's also a delicate part to all the other things we mentioned, which is Palestine is still here. The Palestinians are not giving up. Like this is not just, romanticism of just like, oh, they're not giving up and the struggle is, no, they're fighting to win. They're fighting to survive and they're going to fight to win. They're not going to give up. Like it's been decades where the Israelis have tried to kick the Palestinians out of every home they could imagine when it comes to the PLO and whatever, and they're still here, right? And the same thing at home, like you just said, in the last few months, heck, in the last month with the Epstein files, like, come on, like there has been a lot of, let's say, hand-wringing in certain sectors of the right wing too, about what they have to contend with Trump's, what we knew his involvement, but explicit, even though he's denying it. So things are moving at a fast pace, but I think it's very delicate, right? You don't want to either paint a picture that's too optimistic, because then that sort of undermines the need for action, because we also don't want to treat history as inevitability, but you also don't want to paint a picture that is too dark, because that itself is also not always quite the complete reflection of everything, so it's a very delicate thing. But again, that's the whole problem too, because when you're in a timeline that doesn't make sense, it's also hard to hold these two wires together at the right distance or angle, because in the end, it does feel like an avalanche of shit is coming down your way. I totally understand when people say that. Like my partner is that way. I have a lot of friends who feel that way. And like you, they ask me questions, what's happening? And sometimes I have to be honest, I don't understand. But I do try to annoyingly say, hey, remember, this is still happening, or this group of people is still here, or this has happened before, and this changed. Like Jim Crow, back to our early point, I tell my students that Jim Crow was a like, if you're black and you wanted to register to vote in some states, you were probably risking being disappeared, and that changed. Yeah, that changed. I know it took some time, but it did change. And some liberals and conservatives who were American exceptionalists and wanted to just at least be a little bit more nice for the newly independent Asian and African countries, they were going to give up on Jim Crow eventually, but probably by the 70s, maybe 80s at their own accord. It still took a lot of brave people to do strategic things right. That's the other thing. It's not just hope and change and a flourishing of new ideas. It was more like, hey, did we create the right institutions to help us gather funds? Did we do this and this and this? So yeah, I feel the same way as you. It's a very delicate balance of like a delicate art of speaking reality and also speaking a certain sense of truth, even if it comes off as doomer, because to somebody, you need to at least say to them, hey, things move. You need to be aware. of how they're moving at the very least, even if parts of it is a bit uncomfortable.
Right. I mean, one of the things that I think is actually good, and I, even though it's in a very ugly way, because one thing I'm going to tell you, as a person who's followed Israeli politics and the Palestinian situation since I was in probably my teens, so since the late 90s, and who's, I've seen Palestine, I lived in Egypt. I've dealt with Palestinians in Egypt. I've seen those walls. I've seen those guns. I've seen it actually does make it very clear to you.
Yeah.
What the stakes are. And in some ways I feel simultaneously more and less hope than I've ever felt, because I've been feeling like we've been heading towards this in a slow way for 10 years. Whenever I would cover Israeli politics on the show, I just feel like, are we going to talk about, the slow starvation of 2 million Gazans, and most of whom are women and children who are not even old enough to have voted in the last election they were allowed to have, which was over a decade ago. I bring all this up for me because in a way I feel devastated by like I cannot imagine the loss of human life. I know what the official numbers are. I know that Israel's not even really bothering to lie about it anymore. Like
they're kind of bragging about it sometimes.
It's just like you don't get numbers anymore. Actually, it's just like, and they're and I don't want to make it sound like any of that was worth it. I would rather all those people be here.
100%.
But at the same token, it's like, I never thought I'd live in America where anyone thought Palestinian lives, particularly on the right, were really worth that much. And now they kind of do-ish, which is not as much as I would like, but it's way better than it's ever been. And so let's say ever been, probably since like the 30s. I mean, if you remember, you probably are old enough to remember this, when Jimmy Carter just admitted that like what was going on in the was just apartheid.
He had the book. I have the book.
Right. It's actually a very mild critique of Israel compared to, but holy shit.
I remember that. My parents got the book because he made that critique, and they appreciate that critique. They liked Jimmy Carter after, they weren't, my grandfather was in this country when he was president. He liked him, but I remember, I know what you're talking about. I still, it's like flashes of things in the past, like, which make you kind of like really take stock of things, because you're totally right. Now, when you look at that book, I think I've skimmed it. You're like, damn, this guy was right, but also this is now tepid. Like compared to tepid. Yeah. I remember that. Yes, and he got away with some of it because he was an older white man.
He's an older white Baptist dude, but he still got called an anti-Semite.
Yes, I remember that too. Yes. That's why I forgot about that book. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, this was in the middle of the Bush administration.
Yes.
But this is one of the advantages to A, being in your 40s, and B, having unusual for an American a long memory.
Right.
Because the one thing I get frustrated about is I know people in my 40s who like, many of whom are even like pundits and shit, who seem to have forgotten what even happened 3 years ago, much less 15 or 20. Like,
I mean, I feel the same way sometimes, but most of that for me is just a lot of like real like trauma and like health stuff that I have. But also I think some of it is also conducive to maybe sometimes, not to be rude, I think some people don't need to be pundits either.
Oh no, a lot of people don't need to be pundits.
Yeah,
I actually would like I do believe civic discourse is important to democracy, and I do believe that even under socialism, we probably have democratic means, blah 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 blah. I don't want pundits to exist.
Right.
Like I say this as a person who does it as a side gig,
Right.
And I hate the fact that I'm like, God damn it, I am kind of a pundit, but like I think that the fact that you can make a living giving usually terrible political opinions, and I say usually terrible because there's actual studies that indicate that pundits are more wrong more often than the general public. Like, I'm not just saying this because I dislike it. There are studies like, no, they're more often wrong.
Makes sense.
Like than just asking average people off the street.
Right.
So it's just like, other than their ideological apparatus function, why do we need this as a job? Like, it's just crazy to me.
Also, it's funny because and this is like the second theme of what I wanted to bring up, because there's weirdly there's punditry that's become extremely an occupational vocation, a money vocation, and eyes on me vocation. But then there's anti-intellectualism in the same breath. Punditry, intellectualism do not go hand in hand. Some pundits or some people who talk politics actually take a lot of stock in the fact that they don't read or know things or want to know things, right? So that's the other thing that I feel very strangely about the last several years, is because even there's sections of the left. This is where I think some people on the left might be annoyed by me, but I do think there are some sections of the left that I've come across who also refuse to know that lived experience is not the totalizing force you think when it comes to knowing how to actually think about politics. And you do need to read something, or if you can't have the time to read it, pick something to read with other people, or just follow the news, or try something if you're intending to do actual activism. Like, for me, I have experienced a lot of horrible white supremacy and racism, but I can tell you for a fact that alone would not have led me to some of the positions I have now if I didn't also meet certain writers when I did, and certain people when I did, who introduced me to certain things about thinking for myself and history, right? And I think that's also something that's kind of interesting in the era we're in. We're living in an America that's deeply anti-intellectual, deeply anti-thought, and yet, like you said, has 7 people on shows, 2 of whom are nice and maybe experts, but then the other 6 are just either full-on Nazis, in different, like, instead of saying Jews control the world, like we've said, Muslims do, or something crazy, or the Muslim Brotherhood is behind everything now. We have a world where that exists alongside a world where America, where people don't read enough about things or know things. When I say read, I don't mean they have to put eyes to paper. Like, you can just do Audible, like something when it comes to like stretching out those muscles in your head about like, oh, the Black Panther Party, I knew that they were interested in this. Oh, it connected to this or this or this. Like, not like, sometimes that's also still lacking. And I've come across this in spaces with organizing too, where again, these are not meant to be like attacks on anyone. I've met many great organizers who are still better than me, like tenfold in many capacities. But I've also met organizers who, however well-meaning, did not know things about certain traditions, let's just say, certain ideas about like how things have happened. And that to me is also very frustrating and amusing about the timeline we're in, right? Anti-intellectualism alongside the robust pundit class that's kind of emerged over the last however long cable news has been around.
Right. Yeah, it's a crazy situation. Sudip, where can people find your work?
Yeah, they can find it. Well, I've written for Black Agenda Report, Protein Magazine, Counterpunch several times. Yeah, if people can just hit me up on Twitter, Resist Run. I'm still on there. I might actually leave. I might be one of the few people who leaves. And I'm on Bluesky. Same thing, Resist Run. So if people want to read my work, I post them there. I have a Substack, but just follow me on those 2 things, and then you'll see posts in my Substack that you can read more of my work and more of the things I'm writing about. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming on. I will put a link in the show notes for the article that we started riffing on with Revo Press. And I'm sure you'll be back, Sudip. You've been on now. This is your 4th time, so you're officially a regular.
Oh, nice. I didn't even know that.
So Yeah, it's actually been over a long period of time. I think it's been over
yeah.
like 3.5 years. But
yes.
But you average now coming on once a year, which means you're a regular. So
In the best
thank you for coming
timeline
on.
too. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
Bye.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.